Welcome back. The Trump family's crypto blitz. Eric Trump and Donald Trump Jr. announcing their investment in a Bitcoin mining company. The Trump's American data centers merging with American Bitcoin, aiming to create the world's largest crypto miner and build its own Bitcoin reserve. Joining me now is Trump Organization Executive Vice President and the President's son, Eric Trump. Eric, great to see you.
How are you, Maria?
Great. Congratulations on this. Tell us what you're trying to do and why a Bitcoin reserve is needed.
Yeah, you know, Maria, I never thought I'd fall into the world of crypto until every bank started canceling us for absolutely no reason whatsoever other than the fact that my father was in politics, right? I mean, we got canceled by absolutely everybody. They came after us viciously. And it wasn't until that time that I realized how important crypto was, right? Something that's cheaper, faster, more transparent. You can't be canceled. That's global. And it's what made me fall in love with Bitcoin. It's what made me fall in love with, you know, DeFi and CeFi and stable coins. And we put a lot of our effort into it. We're building a great company, World Liberty Financial. Everybody's talking about it. It's doing phenomenally well. We just launched a stable coin. On the other side, American Bitcoin. I think it's going to be one of the great companies out there. So I truly believe in it. And really, my epiphany was, again, cancel culture and what these financial institutions controlled by very few at the top were able to do to people that they didn't like, even families like ours that had a lot of zeros at the end of their balance sheet.
Well, that's incredible that's one of the catalysts that got you into this. Which banks canceled you? What happened?
Oh, God, everybody. Capital One being the largest. I've sued them recently. Chase canceled us.
Okay, so it was Capital One, because I know that Capital One also canceled Melania Trump, I understand as well. So it was Capital One. Yeah. Who else?
Maria, you can't believe when you get those calls, right? And we have properties, commercial buildings that have thousands of, you know, literally hundreds and hundreds of employees, thousands of people that work in those buildings every single day. They call you up saying, you know, in 2 weeks we're going to need you to, you know, shut down the bank account, otherwise we're going to send. I mean, you know, these bank accounts are ecosystems, and they came after us viciously because my father was in the White House and they wanted to punish us, right? It was legal lawfare, it was political lawfare. And that's what opened my eyes. I mean, I'm a hard asset guy. My entire life has been building real, you know, hotels, golf courses, real estate buildings, right, commercial buildings, et cetera. That's what I've done. If there's anybody's eyes who shouldn't have been open to the world of cryptocurrency, it was mine. Other than I realized the power that these banks had, and I realized how they were exerting that power, and they were canceling businesses all over our country. It was political. It was forced. You know, they were targeting people that they didn't like. It wasn't fair. And then you realize that there's not a single thing that those banks do that can't be done better, cheaper, more efficiently, faster on blockchain. I mean, why is it that the modern financial system runs, you know, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday? Why is it, Maria, that if you want to go get a loan and you've been banking with a certain bank for 30 years, it would probably take you 100 days to go do it, and you'd be filling out antiquated paper forms? It doesn't make sense, right? And again, that's why I fell in love with crypto. And I truly believe that Bitcoin is one of the greatest stores of value, immediately liquid, an unbelievable hedge against real estate, and something we're really excited about.
That's just incredible, everything that you just said. Do you want to see specific regulation clarity in terms of what the boundaries are, the backdrop is in a regulatory front when it comes to stablecoin, when it comes to Bitcoin? What are your thoughts on what that looks like?
Yeah, I think everybody in the industry does. I mean, I think everybody wants guidelines. I mean, that's part of the problem in the crypto industry. It's always been so murky that people didn't know the guidelines to follow. And you know, we have to be the leaders in this country. There's no question, because every other country in the world is doing it and doing it quickly. And I really actually think that U.S. stablecoin, you know, saves the dollar in a very big way. There was a study done that, you know, in Europe, only about 0.5% of Europeans would buy a European stablecoin. Pretty fascinating stuff. Everybody wants U.S. stablecoin, and I think that's tremendously good for the U.S. economy. But listen, crypto's here to stay, right? It's solving so many financial problems. It's bringing parity to the markets. You better believe that, you know, when we look out 10 years in this country, you know, the nature of finance, the nature of banking is going to be very, very different than it is today, and banking in this country is going to finally get in the modern age.
So I'm wondering if, you know, the banks who were canceling you were being told by the Biden administration, cancel the Trump family, or if this was just these banks deciding to do it, because President Trump's agenda is moving forward despite the slew of activist judges trying to stop it. So you get the banks in one corner, and now you've got the judges in the other corner with their resistance,
Sure.
right? The White House is using a specific section of the immigration code called Title VIII to deport more illegal aliens to El Salvador because of Judge James Boasberg. And he ruled that they can't use the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to carry out the deportation flights. Here's the president yesterday on this. Watch.
You know, I got elected on the basis of getting bad people out of our country that shouldn't be here, very dangerous people out of our country. And that's what I did. And then you have a judge that wants to take over. And I can't imagine it can be allowed. If it was up to him, they'd all be put back in our country. These are killers. These are drug lords. These are really bad people.
Eric, your reaction?
Caroline Leavitt did something that was incredible the other day at the White House. She started reading off all the charges, murder, rape, I mean, you're literally going down the list. Literally as the judge was telling them to turn around the plane and bring it back, and you're sitting there just shaking your head saying, how? Like, how could we want these people in this country? And so far, they've gotten rid of 100,000 really bad people. These are gang members. These are people that are brutalizing our streets, brutalizing our communities, causing shootings, causing all sorts of problems. And I really, there's nothing more important. I can't tell you how many friends I've had that have had kids that have died to fentanyl. You see the violence. This is not America. We have to get these people out of here. We got to get the violent killers out of here. We have to create a safe community. And when you see 100,000 of them already deported, honestly, I think America should be cheering. We want safe communities, and that's what my father's doing right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's just amazing to me that the judges are trying to stop this when we know that these people have committed murder and rape and et cetera, and the judge has the nerve to say send them back to the United States. And on the banks, do you think they were being directed by the Biden administration in terms of canceling you and your family?
Sure. Listen, Maria, you can direct somebody to drive off a bridge. It doesn't mean you should drive off the bridge, right? I mean, I'm sure they were, because the legal lawfare from the Biden administration was unbelievable. That doesn't mean that banks should cancel people because of political views. That's exactly what Capital One did. Chase did the same thing. Bank of America did the same thing. TD did the same thing. First Republic did the same thing to us. And by the way, it wasn't just to us. We've got a great competitive advantage. And again, we've got a lot of zeros behind our name. You know how many little small businesses they put out of business because they created some spring that was sold at Bass Pro Shops, and Bass Pro Shop sells duck hunting ammo. I mean, Maria, you wouldn't believe the stories that I heard as I traveled around the country on the campaign trail. The weaponization is real, and it has to stop. You can't have banks pick who they're going to lend to, who they're going to service in the United States of America based on their political affiliation. Yep. We were targeted, and we're going to hold those banks accountable, but it's what made me find crypto, and it's what made me find it so alluring. And again, there's nothing that crypto can't do better. There's nothing that DeFi and CeFi and Bitcoin and blockchain can't do better than these major financial institutions, and they're going to have a rude awakening if they don't wake up.
Unbelievable. Well, look, Senator Tim Scott has been leading the hearings here on these banks. I'm not sure if TD was there or Capital One. I don't think Capital One was there, but you mentioned Capital One Financial, TD, and Bank of America. We're going to check on all of that and check if those banks were actually at the hearing with Tim Scott. But I got to get your take on this as well, because your wife, Lara Trump, did such a great job as the head of the RNC during the campaign season. And one thing that she was trying to get her arms around is how much fraud there was with regard to illegals in this country. Well, Elon Musk yesterday said that he has exposed what he is calling mind-boggling fraud. Watch this.
This is what jumped out at us. When we saw these numbers, we were like, what is this? In 21, you see 270,000 people, goes all the way to 2.1 million in 24. These are non-citizens that are getting Social Security numbers.
Non-citizens getting Social Security numbers. Eric, how many times did we talk about this during the campaign? Okay, I had the Attorney General of Texas tell me that there were tables set up that illegals were getting Social Security numbers, and the media slammed anybody who said anything like that. Now we have the evidence from Elon Musk. No wonder they hate Elon Musk, and they're trying to stop President Trump. They're exposing everything. Your reaction? Millions of people, illegals who have got Social Security numbers.
Maria, the irony is they always said that Donald Trump was the guy who was going to destroy Social Security, yet there's 5.5 million illegal immigrants, right, that have been on Social Security since 2021. There's 15 million people over the age of 120 years old that are on Social Security. So my father's trying to save Social Security, but how do you save Social Security when every single day they fight you, saying you can't take off the people who are clearly dead? You know, you can't take off 5.5 million illegal immigrants. Many of them are getting Medicare, at this point. They're taking the benefits of the people who worked, every day of their life. They paid into the system every single day of their life. And yet you've got massive fraud. And every single time my father tries to combat it, and he's doing a hell of a job, they fight him and they fight him and they bring him to court and they, weaponize it and they smear him and they have the liberal media go after him. I mean, who in the world is against getting rid of 15 million dead people off of Social Security? Why is that something that's being fought, right? Who is against getting rid of 5.5 million illegal immigrants on Social Security who have never paid a damn thing into the system, and actually prioritizing the American people?
Maybe Democrats are, because they wanted to get those people to vote.
They all are, and then they run to Washington D.C. where they forum shop and they get some judge and they try and delay anything that Elon wants to do, anything that my father wants to do. That's their game plan, and I hope Americans see it. My father is fighting for the American people who have paid in their entire life, and the amount of fraud in this country is staggering. I mean, it blows you away every single day. It
does. It does.
Again, another $7 million to transgender mice studies. I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
Well, I mean, what gets me is that it's fraud because it's illegal for a non-citizen to vote in a federal election, and yet they wanted that so that they could get Democrat votes. Meanwhile, Democrat senators are giving a marathon speech right now on the Senate floor. They're railing against the president, railing against Elon Musk and Doge. They started speaking last night at 7 o'clock in the evening. They are still at it right now. The attacks on Musk causing an increase in violence and protests against Tesla dealerships and Tesla owners across the country. Look at these cars on fire. Musk is not backing down. He says Doge will investigate how certain lawmakers have accumulated a great deal of wealth while making a congressional salary. I mean, what do you think? These people make about $200,000 a year, $175,000 a year, and yet people like Nancy Pelosi and others, they're worth $20+ million. How did that happen on a $175,000 salary?
These aren't people who made money in the private sector before they went into government and then wanted to serve and took a massive pay cut, right? I mean, that's what we should have. These are people who have been in public service their entire lives and have made an absolute fortune. I mean, look at the Clinton family. I mean, they were in public service their entire lives and they're worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Nancy Pelosi, the greatest trader of all time, she makes Warren Buffett look like a lightweight by comparison, because guess what? She gets inside information about, 3 weeks before a bill is passed. She whispers it to her husband. Her husband trades on some stock. They make an absolute fortune. I mean, this can't happen. And then every single time they ask her, they won't put together legislation. Maria, if you or I did that, we'd go to jail for insider trading. I mean, that's the irony of this entire thing. But yet, the people that we're reliant on to run our government, are doing the exact opposite. It's an absolute disgrace. I mean, it's truly a disgrace. And it's actually become a mockery as you have all these indexes that track literally the trades of, and these things are up 50, 60% every single year. I mean, it's a disgrace.
That's right. Eric, thank you. Great to see you this morning, Eric. Eric Trump joining us. And by the way, on that Capital One story, a Capital One spokesperson, told Fox News Digital that Capital One has not and does not close customer accounts for political reasons. That is from Capital One.